So I hope that was helpful. And we did conclude that in part 8. I thought it was interesting because I was hoping to finish it on part 7, which would have been, the idea of perfection or complete, 7 parts. But you know what? I like 8 though, new beginnings, because I think now we have a new beginning to go in our endurance. I think it's like this is the page just turned. Okay, so it's like a new beginning for us to go and become blessed. Those that are blessed, that can endure, be proved, and receive the crown. Oh, amen and amen. All right, so this is what we call the afterburn. So if anybody has a comment or question, Zuriel has a mic, and Craig is on the live stream with Robert. And so you can go ahead and raise your hand or type it. And we're going to ask that you keep your comments or questions specifically to the teaching. Please bear with me. If it's going to take a long time to answer, I may ask you to contact me privately so that I can do that. We don't want to take too long here. It's already 4 o'clock, so we do have a little bit of time. Okay, Daweed's going to get us started.
I liked what you said about the synagogue of Satan and those who claim they are Yehudim but are not. Another aspect to it theoretically might be, and this is a question I'm asking you, would it be fair to say that it also has to do with the nature of the word Shem, name, being reputation, fame, authority? They're trying to claim the authority, fame, and reputation of Yehudim to, in essence, be treated as such, but they are not doing what that is. So, in essence, it's like somebody that's not clean saying they're clean so that they can be around the people that are clean.
Okay, I could go with that. Yeah, I can go with that. I mean, look, this is the same problem with those that Yeshua had trouble with the Pharisees and the scribes and Sadducees, etc. When they were, when he said, do what they say, don't do what they do. Because they say, but they don't do. Okay, and they were also, listen, the ones who arrested him and eventually crucified him, okay, those ones were of the synagogue of Satan. They were accusers and adversaries to what Yeshua was doing. Not all the Jews, but those in the leadership that were doing exactly that. It's when Yeshua said to them, when you lie, you show that you're who your father really is. Right, because your father is the father of lies. We show who we're of by what we do. And that's why when it talks about those of the synagogue of Satan, they're saying those that are of assembly, who are doing the work of their father, the devil, who is the accuser and the adversary of what's the truth. And so we look at what people do to figure out who's who, not we look at their bloodline. Okay? All right, just like bloodline doesn't get you in, bloodline also is not about what we're pointing bad fingers at either. Okay? There are no bad bloodlines, there's bad people in the bloodlines. And that we have to be careful with so that we don't turn this into a racial thing. All right? Of course, somebody might get all upset and say, well, what about the Nephilim? Okay, so maybe that bloodline could be a problem. That's because it's not of Adam. Okay, it's the only bloodline we need to be a part of is the Adamic bloodline, which should hopefully be almost all of us, right? Okay, but we're not talking about the racial stuff as in of this tribe or this people or that people. Because I can just see it now, all those guys out there going, oh, what about the Nephilim?
From Steve Waffle in John 15:20, some use this as a reason why they suffer and claim it's due to the way they walk. But the truth is, it was themselves that brought the persecution. Please clarify this.
Okay, remember the word that I said to you, a servant is not greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they shall persecute you too. If they've guarded my word, they would guard yours too. Okay, I'm not sure what Steve's trying to say here. People are claiming it is what?
I know based on some Marco Polos and Facebook posts that Steve was claiming that you're a liar if you're not walking the walk, and then claiming you're being persecuted when you're actually not walking the walk. I think to try and help explain it.
Yeah, I mean, all of this is got to be taken in context, that those that he's talking about here are those that are actually going to follow him. Just like in 1 John, it says those who claim they are going to be followers of him and know him are to walk as he walked. All right? If you're being persecuted, you may be being persecuted because you're not walking the walk, and Abba's trying to get your attention. I love it all the time. Well, I guess that's not the right word. I just find it interesting when people contact me, and I'm like, did it ever occur to you that the reason that you're going through all this is because you haven't gotten this, and this all straightened out? And Abba's just trying to get your attention? If you've got friends or family members that ask you for prayers all the time for different things, and those things never seem to be working out, why not tell them that, look, I've been praying, and they're like, well, it's not working. Well, because you're not doing anything on your side of it. My prayers are not going to override your bad behavior. And so let's be careful to understand that when we're praying for family members and friends and coworkers, whoever it is, that yes, we can pray for them, but the whole point is that Abba would get their attention to draw them to the point where they realize that they need to now be inspired to do their stuff. That Abba honored your prayer because you're doing the right things, and that they would get that light bulb, but then they might come to you all the time to try to override their stupidity or their foolishness, and at some point it's going to stop working because it's no longer going to be your merit that is getting the answer to the prayer. Abba may do it to strengthen your faith the first couple of times. At some point, it's supposed to be to strengthen their faith. And that's the way I pray, by the way, and you should pray the same way. And I think we put that in the Master Teach Us to Pray, I'm not sure. But I mean, I always pray, Abba, do this in such a way that those who are witnessing it and receive the blessing are drawn to you. I don't just need it for me to strengthen my faith, because if my faith needed that much strength, then he's not listening to me at this point anyway, because I'm all struggling with other things. You're supposed to come in faith as one who believes that he answers prayer. So it will strengthen my faith if the prayers are answered. I don't need that. I want the other person who needs it to get that. Does that make sense?
Earl Lee asked about a question about Revelation 2:9. Is that works before I came to Torah, or any that has not come to my heart? And John 15, what fruit am I looking for?
Okay, so these are all, listen, Revelation is written to the assembly. So by assembly, that means those who should know. Okay, so this is only talking to those from the point that you should have known. Okay, and as far as fruit, in other words, when you know to keep the Sabbath, the fruit is that you keep the Sabbath. When you know not to steal, then the fruit is that you're not stealing. When you know to eat a certain way, then the fruit is when you eat that way. In other words, the fruit is that you actually apply the information. That's the fruit. Because it's like when Yeshua said, they know, and so they teach you, and so listen to what they say, but don't do what they do because they're not bearing the fruit. They're not doing the doing, okay? They're not doing the doing. And so the fruit is that you actually are doing what the instruction was. That's how you bear fruit. If the fruit is that you're now loving him and you're loving each other the way he's instructing to do. Okay, Tricia?
Praise Abba for this word. This was a perfect word for a tremendously difficult week. And it's quite interesting. I believe it was last night, I shared on Marco Polo about the Ten Commandments, and it stirred me. And I'm hearing you read in John 15:17. It says these words, I command you so that you love one another. My interpretation that I was getting last night was, and I'll share the way I understood the Ten Commandments as a Jehovah's Witness, is they were just laws that you were just to do. There was no real relationship with them. In Christianity, Torah was done away with, so your flesh was to follow that it wanted to, and then if JC wanted to deliver you, he would. And so in Torah, having the relationship with him, and understanding that the commands are there, when he says guard them and do them, it's love to our Creator. But in my mindset, because I had these two other distorted views, the commands were were a blessing. So if you obeyed them, you would be blessed. You would get your Deuteronomy blessing, which is a me and a selfish reason. So I'm going to obey them so I can be blessed. It was an I purpose. And last night I was able to see that the commands are not for me, but the commands are for others. The commands are so that in my obedience to loving my neighbor, by not stealing, by not committing adultery, by not committing murder, by not doing these things to my brother, I am loving him and I'm caring about their well-being, not whether I'm going to get blessed because I'm obeying the word. And I thought it was very beautiful how the word all ties in. It's about, as we're building this community and as we're becoming, cohesive and part of his bride, that we are looking at it as an outward expression of who we are versus an inward expression of what we get. And so I want to say that on that. And then on another note, about this whole branch, to me, I can't get the connection because it doesn't, there's something in the equation that doesn't make sense to me. And it says, John 15:2, it says, every branch in me that bears no fruit, he takes away. But it says, if you stay in me, you'll bear much fruit. So how can you be in the branch and be taken away, but yet if you're in the branch, you're going to bear fruit?
No, what he's saying is that while you're in him, you're bearing fruit.
Right.
If you don't stay, you're not bearing fruit. If you stay, you bear fruit.
But it says every branch in me, so that means you're already in me.
And you can start off like the parable of the sower. You can get all excited and be in him and be zealously doing all kinds of stuff, and then you make a left turn or a right turn, and now you're not in him anymore. Now you're not bearing fruit. If you stay in him, you bear fruit.
Okay, so then you have to choose to not do, so that there should be a comma there, so that you're actually stopping from being in him.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay?
That makes more sense. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, and by the way, let me just clarify in something that Abba does absolutely want you to have blessing, want you to be motivated by receiving blessing, but it shouldn't just be about you. So add the second part of that. Don't lose the first, because he does, remember, Torah does three things, right? It blesses you, it keeps you safe. You're focusing on the second part of it, which is the keeping others safe. If you're not breaking the commandments, they're safer, that's loving them. But he does want you to be motivated by you, because after all, why would you do anything if there wasn't anything in it for you? And so there has to be something in it for you, or you would never do it. You do only the things you do because, after all, in some ways, it's going to benefit you. So that's part of it. Okay? Eternal life is because you don't want to die, you want to live forever. And so that's for you. Yes, he gives you that carrot to motivate you. But then it's not to be done inwardly only about you, to realize that it's a community, it's a community-based idea. And so you're receiving it so that it can then be spread out beyond you. You're a conduit point. But as a conduit, you have to receive it first. And you see that it's good for you, that you then see it's good for everybody else. And so don't mistake the idea that somehow it's selfish. No, the reason you're here is because you want what it gives you, or you wouldn't be doing it. If it did nothing for you, you wouldn't be here. And so embrace that. But if you're stuck there, then you're missing the whole point. That's only part of the point. You're missing the whole point. The whole point is that it's not about you. It's about you, and then in the context of a community, in the context of a creator, and what his plan is. So getting the right framework of the context is where we break down. But if there was nothing in it for you, you wouldn't be here. Okay, you're here for one of two reasons. Well, I can give you more than one, but I'll give you a couple of main reasons. One is your life has sucked and you're trying to figure out a way to get it better. And you're hoping this will be a solution. By the way, that means it's about you. Or number two, you have this, like most of us do, this sort of mortality issue, and you don't really feel good about the idea that you're going to die. And you'd like to know there's a way to escape that. And so that's also about you. You'd like to know that you could live. You'd also like to know that the people that you love, you'll also get to know them and spend time with them beyond this physical realm. And so that's also for you. See, when he gives you Deuteronomy 28, the first half of the chapter was absolutely telling them, if you listen to me, you get all these blessings. So yes, it's about you, but that's just one little piece. It's got to go beyond that. Because if you're only doing this about you, you're going to miss everything about what's going on. And so Trisha's point is very well made, but just don't overstep that and forget about the part that was about you. He wants you to feel loved by him and blessed. That's why it says, blessed is the man. He wants you to receive the blessings. He wants you, see, that's the hard part for you. I know that. But you are supposed to be receiving. This is about you also. But I think the reason you got so excited about the second part of it is because you're having trouble receiving the first part. All right? Which is why you wanted to grab the mic and argue with me. But then you realized that maybe that wasn't what you needed to do. You have to understand this is not just for you, but it is for you. And that you can then share with others and say, hey, you want what I have, I can tell you how to get it. Okay, I can tell you how. Look, we do that already, right? If you find, a cure for something or a treatment for something that you're suffering with, you will right away, you want to share that with people. Or you find a great recipe, or you read a great book, or you saw a great movie. You want to bless others with it because it blessed you. You enjoyed it. It was great. It was about you for that moment, but now you want to share it. Or people see something going on with you, and they go, wow, how come, you used to be so stressed, and now you have peace. Where'd that come from? Okay, so now you're being blessed, and now you can share that with somebody else. So it's multiple tiers here. We should absolutely be understanding that we're supposed to receive the blessings. But that may be a problem for you to receive blessings because you may not feel like you deserve it. Why should he give me any blessing? I mean, I can understand giving me blessings so that I can give it to other people or so it's about them. Well, some of you need to embrace this because he's trying to make you happy. He says, I did this. Wait, what did he say here? He said, I did this so that your joy might be complete. That sounds like it's for me. That's something you should embrace for yourself. He did these things so that you might have joy, but then that joy would overflow and to be shared with others. And so the only reason I'm going through this is because I knew what she needed after the way she said it, okay? She's 1,000,000% right, but the way she said it almost did away with the first step. And I don't want you to miss the first step. You are supposed to receive joy and blessing from obedience, and then it's supposed to go further. It's supposed to be about others because then in doing the obedience, it demonstrates your love for them. And then they can receive the blessings too by embracing the same walk.
Just noticed that some people are having a problem with the part about where he said, I'm the vine, you are the branches, he who abides in me. It's not that the vine or the branch actually disconnects itself directly, as in no longer connected. It's that it ends up no longer accepting sap because it's rejecting the vine. For whatever reason. It could be, for example, being in a case where you're having unforgiveness towards your brother or something like that. And so you end up starting to go against Torah, so the sap's not able to flow into you, and therefore you can't produce any more fruit, and you start to wither.
And then you dry up and you fall off.
And then you dry up, sure. And you either fall off or you end up being cut off because you're, again, not supporting the vine in the sense that you need to be supporting it through your leaves and everything else. And so you're drying up, and therefore the pruner has to come and take you off. And that's where I see it. Because even in nature, you'll see vines and tree branches that somehow, for some reason, just ended up withering.
Good. Well said.
Still being connected.
Well said.
Got a question, and I don't want to believe this, and I don't want to believe you said this, but I don't know how else to put this to bed than to bring it out and put it in the light. To endure trials, does that mean to remain in a relationship with somebody that's abusive?
No.
You have to forgive them because you got to endure the trial.
No, enduring means, okay, while you're in something, okay, how do I give a good question? How do I put this? All right. Let's say for some reason I wanted to see what you can handle and I'm pinching you, all right? Now you can endure that pinching, or you could yell, scream, whine about it and everything else. In other words, while you're in a trial and a way of escape has not yet been provided and you're stuck in a trial, you endure it knowing that somehow this is going to work, something that the Father's trying to work, and look for that way of escape. So endure doesn't mean just suffer without trying to get out. It doesn't mean not try. In other words, it has to do with understanding that it's going to take your attitude is really the enduring part. How you handle the trial is the endurance. So if we're having a contest, and it's being compared to a contest here, and in the contest, we're both going to pinch each other and see how we endure that. Well, we're going to be seeing if one of us is going to start going, and then you win. Now, of course, you can decide to pull your arm away and not be pinched. So if you're in an abusive relationship, you should make the decision to get out of that abusive relationship or seek counsel on how to get out of that abusive relationship. But it's how you're reacting inside and outside to that abuse. Yeshua was abused. He chose not to attack or to do anything or spew anything back at the people that were. He didn't revile. Okay? That was the word I was looking for. He wasn't going to revile. He wasn't going to attack in that way. So if you're in any situation, you are to endure it like he would while you're still actively trying to get out of it and deal with it or learn what you're supposed to learn from it. So no, endurance doesn't mean just suffer silently and take it. It means suffer silently and take it while you're actively trying to figure out the way of escape. What is it you were supposed to be learning and how do you find that exit door? All right? But it's how you're handling it in the meantime. While you're in it, how are you handling it? Okay? Is it growing you to be more Yeshua-like, or are you regressing in the wrong direction? But no, I would never encourage anybody to to stay in an abusive situation because after all, you just got to endure it. No, you have to endure it while you're in it. You don't have to stay in it. Did that answer the question? Okay? And by the way, all of you should do the same thing Frederick just did. If there's anything you think I said and you need clarification on, please ask. Even if you don't do it this way, come and ask me privately, doesn't matter. But just be clarified on that because as you can see, it may be that I wasn't saying what you thought I was saying, and then it can get a chance to be clarified. But yes, we all find ourselves in situations that are, we'll call them trials, okay? We'll put in a whole big bucket called trials. Some of them are tougher than others. Some of them are more painful than others. And you must endure while you're in it. That doesn't mean you have to embrace being in it and try to stay in it longer. Just say, well, I'm going to prove my endurance. I'm just going to stay in this thing. No, if there's a way out, get out. If he shows you an exit door, go out the exit door. But how are you handling it while you're in it? Stuff happens in people's lives, and I watch them call each other up and whine and complain and attack the other thing. And, stop that. Stop that. Think about, I'll give you a simple example. You're stuck in traffic, and you're late getting somewhere. And just as it looks like it's opening up, somebody cuts you off. I mean, where's your attitude during this trial? Are you enduring it, meaning maintaining a good attitude? Or are you showing the person how you feel they're number one? And yelling and screaming and complaining to the person there, can you believe this guy just did blah, 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 blah? Or you're just sitting there going, is what it is. I'm going to get there eventually. It'll be okay. I'm going to maintain my attitude. So that's the kind of example I wanted to give for that, okay? It's how you handle when you're in the trial, that's the endurance. Is being in the trial, look, this is the bigger point that you see in the scripture. Is the trial going to cause you to no longer stay in him? Because that goes back to the sower of the seed, right? Those that are, because of the cares and the pressures of this world, etc., don't stay in him. See, all these things tie together. And that's the Ruach. See, I'll give credit to the Ruach there, whether it is or not. That's the Ruach stirring to remembrance something I had in me, connecting dots together. We're talking about this. We're talking about the branch and vine and this. And then wait a minute. The parable of the sower of the seed talks about the exact same thing. If that person had endured, they would have been fine. They would have actually been better ground. But they didn't endure when the pressures and the cares of this world showed up. And so that's the endurance to keep going forward in spite of the pressures, to keep going forward in spite of the trials, to keep going forward in spite of the situation. Okay, let's say that the idea is being unconditional. We should be non-situational. In other words, the situation should not matter as to whether or not you do what you're supposed to do or not. Well, I do what I'm supposed to do, but then wait a minute, but then my family called me and my mother got in my face or my brother wouldn't talk to me again or blah, 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 blah. No, now you're situationally obedient. If it's the right situation, I listen, and when I'm not situation, then I don't. No. The situation shouldn't matter. You're going to follow and believe and obey, or you're not. And so when the situation is tough, you endure through it by staying the course until the way of escape is provided. All right? Look at the Israelites. They were escaping. Everything seemed fine. They get to the sea, and everything is blocked up. And what did they do? Did they endure? No, they panicked. And Moses said, look, stop that. Be still and let the deliverance come. So that's for the person in an abusive situation. Be still. Look for that door that's going to be a deliverance spot that's opened up, the parting of the sea, whatever it is. And then get out. But don't do anything to destroy your walk in that process. Your walk must be maintained through the whole thing. That's the endurance.
Yes, I was a little bit confused on the 1 John 2, 7 and 8 about the I give you no fresh commandment or no new commandment, and then right below and verse 8, then it goes, again, and fresh commandment I give you.
Well, I think that, again, we have trouble with language. He's trying to refresh the idea. He's like, I want you to treat this like it's let's renew this, let's refresh in this. Okay, again, we're hampered by words not translating well from language to language. And if you speak any other language, you know what I'm talking about. You can't just translate from your language into English or English into your language one-to-one. It loses stuff in the translation, okay? And so I remember when I was in South Africa and they were mentioning something like in Afrikaans, and they said, but in Afrikaans, it means more than I can put in English to help you understand what this word really means. So I'll give you the best I can in English, but it's still going to fall short because the flavor and the fullness of what people understand the word to mean in that language doesn't actually translate well into this other language. Okay? So I think that what you have there is a translation problem where it's really a refreshing. I want to refresh and give you this idea that something, and by the way, what he said isn't anything new. I mean, he said it's the same old thing that you know. Okay, look, he says, beloved, I write no fresh command to you. But it's an old command. And they said, look, again, I refresh the command to you, which is true in you. He said, look, this is what's going on. He said, I'm telling you, this is what's happening. But if you stay in the light, okay, and you hate your brother, you're still in the darkness. So I want to kind of refresh this idea. I'm trying to give you a new idea to understand. See, maybe you haven't, he's saying, look, you haven't maybe put this piece together exactly this way, where if you claim to be here, but you're still walking here, really you're still over there. You think you're over here. Okay, I used to call this my shopping mall model. You know that you are here thing on the map? You're in a shopping mall and you got the big map. See, the problem with most of the people that I deal with is that they see in their own head a you are here. Let's say they're standing in front of JCPenney, okay? But they're looking at the map, and JCPenney's right behind them, but they're looking at the map, and in their mind, the you are here, they're reading it as being like they're over here in front of the sporting goods store. See, if your GPS in your own head is completely out of whack, that's the guys who say, Lord, Lord, but they see their whole thing was out of whack. They thought they had arrived when they hadn't arrived. They thought they were in a place that they really weren't. And so that's what he's talking about in 1 John. He's saying, look, you think you're in the light when, look, your actions prove you're not. But because you have certain information and certain behaviors that you have corrected, in other words, so you're keeping the Sabbath and the feast, you're eating right, but you hate your brother. Guess what? You're still in the darkness anyway. Doesn't matter that these other things are in the light.
I just wanted to make an observation on abiding in the vine, John 15. I was just looking at the context, and it seems like he's talking to us. We're children in our relationship with him. And I liken it to Abraham as a good example. I think that when we look at his relationship with God, he loved God. We had no doubt about it. And he kept the Torah. We have no doubt about it. But he did not keep the Torah because he wanted the blessing. The blessings that that the Father gave him was as a result, or just maybe an affirmation of that relationship. And I think that, what is being said here is saying that, he's encouraging us to live that kind of a life as Abraham had lived, and we will bear fruit. I mean, we have no doubt that he bore fruit, all kinds of good fruit. But his relationship was so mature.
That's true. I mean, look, and again, remember, he had received all kinds of blessings from walking the walk, the actual blessings of being said you're going to be the father of many nations and all those other things. He didn't do what he did to receive that blessing. But he received that blessing because he was walking this whole walk out, knowing and trusting that everything else he's done had brought blessing to his life. He received the things that we're told. We're blessed, we're safe. And he had found that he had been given provision and protected. And so it's in his full obedience, as he's called Father of the Faithful, etc., in his full obedience and his emunah, he was then given these greater promises. But the basic promises that are given to all of us, he was already experiencing those in his walk. Okay, the fruit that was happening and the blessing that came because of the fruit. So absolutely. But again, think of it like children. If you have a great relationship, which most of you I know did not, so I'm not going to assume that, but if let's say you had a great relationship with your father, with your parents, then you would have had especially if you embraced and obeyed your parent, but you did it because you found and knew that they loved you and you loved them, and you found that when you listened, it worked. So then you were doing it for that, you already had that relationship. You knew that obedience brought blessing. And also when disobedience, if you did disobey, that it didn't work, that things went badly. I've had to talk to my children. I've said over at times, I said, look, okay, now you went and did it your way. You see what happens? Next time you want to listen. That's kind of what our Father in heaven does. He looks at us like children. He says, look, you see the fruit of what happens. When you listen, look what happens. When you don't listen, look what happens. And the contrast should be pretty stark and obvious. Okay, the sad part is almost none of us had good parents and really good relationships and everything to look back at. So when we deal with love your father and trust your father and all this stuff, and you had a father that was really the biggest problem in your life, well, that's hard to do. And I counsel people all the time that either didn't have one or the one they had, they wish they didn't have. And then they're coming to a scriptural place where they're supposed to embrace and love their father. That's a little tough. Or Yeshua as their older brother. Well, what if your older brother abused you? And he was the problem. These are some tough things to connect when you've already got a bad connection. You've got this context that's not good. And so we deal with a lot of people in counseling that's really tough for them because they did not have a good father or a good older brother. But be excited to know that you have the best one now. Even if you don't know how to relate to that one because you have no context for it, even if you don't know what that's supposed to look like, that's where you have mentoring and discipleship and other people to help you along, and he's going to help you as well. But realize that you have the best one now. And it all comes back to, and I appreciate you pointing out, it all comes back to he always wants us to approach as a child would. Okay? As a child would.
J.M. Gably asks, how do we know when he is talking about the law that he isn't just talking about the 10 Commandments?
Because the only times that he's talking about the 10 Commandments, he refers to them as the 10 Commandments or the 10 words. Otherwise, he's talking about all of it. When it is just the 10, he mentions the 10.
Absolutely. And then there seems to be a lot of questions about how we know who our brother is.
All right, well, we can go into that more in a second, but let me just also say this. And part of the other reason we know this is because in Leviticus 19:18 is where it says, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. That's obviously not part of the 10 Commandments. And the connection to all these, if you love me, guard my commandments, and then connecting it to loving each other, and people knowing you are my disciples if you love one another, and connecting that to commandment keeping is obviously outside just the simplicity of the 10, okay? And because that was in Leviticus 19, and so you can see that that's obviously outside of the Exodus 20 or Deuteronomy where you have just the 10 listed. All right. Now, as far as loving your neighbor as yourself, okay. So This is first and foremost those in the body. He never tells you to be neighborly with the world. You're not supposed to have friendship with the world. He says, don't be friends with the world. He says, have no fellowship with the world. So we're talking about those in the body. Okay, first and foremost, we're talking about those in the body. Now, you can still show you're caring for the world. Look, Yeshua gave his life for the world and for all of us when we weren't giving a you-know-what about him. Okay? So yes, if you saw somebody where you can help or be in, is in need, you should be there to help and show, let his light shine through you. Okay, but the love, he says, brothers, I want you to have love one for another. And actually in 1 John it says, those who hate their brothers. Okay, your brothers are your brothers in Mashiach, not your brothers in your bloodline. Not your brothers of your gang, not the brothers of your this or your that. It's the brothers of the body. Hopefully that answers the question.